How people who were abused mentally by narcissists behaved. Don't miss out. Hello again, and thank you for visiting the channel. Gaining insight into the actions of people who have suffered psychological abuse at the hands of narcissists is today's vital subject. A word of caution before we begin. The actions we're about to talk about can have far-reaching consequences for the person involved and their future relationships. Showing empathy and understanding is key while dealing with this subject. Everyone is aware that different people's life experiences might cause them to act differently. Changes can be both good and bad. The latter can be particularly devastating when they result from the mental abuse that narcissists inflict. In this video, we'll talk about 10 telltale signs that someone who has experienced this kind of abuse is about to act out. The best way to help those who are struggling is to gain insight into their habits so that we can empathize with them. If you are prepared to learn about the consequences of narcissists' psychological abuse, then let's get started. To make sure you don't miss a thing, subscribe to our channel and get all the news as it happens. We appreciate you coming here, and now we can begin. Priority 1. Rapid disinterest. People who have been victims of mental abuse frequently find that they suddenly no longer have any interest in things that used to bring them joy or fulfillment. A general lack of energy and enthusiasm, even when given the chance to partake in activities that were once enjoyed, characterize this disinterest. As a result of the narcissist's constant gaslighting and manipulation, the victim develops a chronically negative outlook on life and begins to expect setbacks in all that they try. As a result, people stop engaging in things they used to enjoy since they think they're pointless or don't provide any satisfaction. Getting past this disinterest necessitates dealing with the abuser's deeply ingrained ideas and patterns of thinking and re-establishing hope and a feeling of purpose. Second, a lack of self-assurance. The victim's self-esteem, confidence, and ability to bounce back from adversity are all severely damaged by mental abuse. Victims of verbal and physical abuse frequently absorb their abuser's degrading comments and criticisms, which can lead to an overwhelming feeling of worthlessness and exposure. Victims still struggle with crippling self-doubt and the fear of others' judgments, even though they try to hide their pain and appear strong. They are unable to stand up for themselves and their needs because of their widespread lack of self-confidence, which in turn keeps them in an abusive cycle. If you want to boost your self-confidence, you need to work on your negative self-perceptions and surround yourself with positive people who will affirm and encourage you. Thirdly, acting recklessly. Those who have been mentally abused are more likely to act recklessly, without thinking about the consequences for themselves or those around them. The victim's inability to think things through causes them to act recklessly, which in turn derives from the severe psychological harm imposed by the abuser. The victim may feel helpless to make their own decisions because the abuser has conditioned them to rely on them through years of manipulation and control. As a result of the abuser's manipulations, the victim may begin to believe that her every choice will have unfavorable outcomes. As a result, the victim starts to act without thinking, becoming more and more careless. Fourthly, irrational beliefs. Irrationality and warped views of reality set in when a victim's ability for rational cognition is eroded by mental trauma. A victim's thinking could be illogical if they reject rational thought in favor of irrational beliefs and heightened emotional reactions. In order to control their victim, abusers often force their victims to believe harmful things about themselves and the world. This distortion of reality weakens the victim's cognitive abilities. These false ideas keep the victim mired in a never-ending pit of fear and self-doubt, making them an easy target for further forms of control and manipulation. In order to overcome thoughtless thinking, one must work through irrational beliefs and develop a more reasonable and perceptive attitude via therapy and introspection. Fifth point, excessive conformity. One symptom of overcompliance is a tendency to give in to other people's demands to an unhealthy degree, even when doing so compromises one's own safety or interests. Complying with someone's requests is one thing, but going above and above by constantly responding yes despite one's own limits or boundaries is overcompliance. Individuals prioritize the demands of others over their own needs, frequently due to a fear of confrontation, rejection, or conflict. Because they are unable to stand up for themselves in social situations, people who engage in this pattern of conduct may experience frustration, fatigue, and a diminished sense of agency. Sixth on the list, mental health issues. When a person is mentally abused by a narcissist, they may also suffer from anxiety and depression. Persistent emotions of despair and anxiety are common results of the deep psychological wounds caused by the cruel nature of mental abuse. As they wait for the next verbal attack or manipulation, victims may feel themselves caught in a never-ending cycle of fear. A person's feeling of self-worth and stability can be eroded by the emotional toll of enduring such abuse. Feelings of hopelessness and despair are intensified by the narcissist's actions, which create an environment of constant fear and uncertainty. In order to recover one's emotional health and navigate the complicated aftermath of mental abuse, it is vital to seek the support of mental health specialists. The seventh point, hatred. Anger and hostility are common reactions to the psychological harm that can result from mental abuse. As a form of punishment, victims often bottle up their feelings of hatred and bitterness toward their abusers. When dealing with narcissistic abusers, who often display an appearance of superiority, the urge for vengeance becomes a powerful motivator. Victims desire to regain control and self-respect after years of submissive behavior and demands from their abusers. A feeling of spitefulness may develop and manifest in other areas of life when one is unable to exact revenge on a narcissist. A vicious cycle of negativity and animosity can be perpetuated when victims unknowingly direct their anger onto others. Eighth, uncomfortable conduct. Narcissistic abuse victims often struggle to find peace and calm due to the stress and worry they experience, which can be expressed in restless behavior. Victims are continuously on edge, displaying signs of restlessness and anxiety while having difficulty focusing and remaining calm. Their minds are always racing with pessimistic ideas, and they have a tendency to dwell on made-up problems that make them feel even worse. Repetitive motions or gestures, including chewing nails, tapping feet, or fidgeting, could help victims cope with their inner turmoil. You can temporarily alleviate overpowering emotions and release pent-up anxiety through these physical indications of unsettled behavior. Ninth point, inadequate self-regulation. The loss of mental autonomy brought on by chronic mental abuse leads to zero self-control, which is characterized by an individual's incapacity to manage their own emotions, impulses, and behaviors. Under the constant pressure of manipulation and gaslighting, the mind, the control center for human behavior, becomes vulnerable. Impulsive behavior and emotional outbursts result from victims' lack of self-control and discernment. Negative outcomes, including relationships, professional opportunities, and general health, might result from a lack of self-control. To recover from the impacts of mental abuse, it is essential to regain control over one's life and learn effective ways to cope. In 10th place, pessimism. A gloomy view on life and an overwhelming feeling of despair define pessimism, a prevalent mentality. Many people who have been victims of mental abuse develop an ingrained pattern of self-doubt and generalized negativity. Their negative outlook is fueled by their history of being degraded and manipulated, which causes them to fear the worst in any circumstance. Because of this constant mistrust and anxiety, they are unable to enjoy life to the fullest, and their emotions of worthlessness and inadequacy are reinforced. In order to overcome pessimism, one must actively work to combat negative thought patterns and develop optimism and resilience. Someone you know may be going through or has gone through mental abuse at the hands of a narcissist. Victims' road to recovery begins with the ability to recognize behavioral changes. Seeking advice from an expert can offer priceless assistance and knowledge. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you think this video was useful. Your support and viewership are much appreciated.